Hi, I'm PK Beats, if you didn't know that. Alright, well, enough of the intro. Take a look at this. When I use the bomber item, the amount of damage dealt to the opponent is 48%. This, being in the constant environment that is a 1v1 in training mode. It'll deal 48% so long as the main part of the explosion hits, which is a pretty generous range. This is also the case for when Sephiroth uses the item, 48%, because why wouldn't it be, right? Even a huge character like Bowser, or a baby character like Pichu, it's all 48%. But when I use it with Jigglypuff, it does 45.6% now, a multiplier of 0.95 times the base. This was actually told to me by Examinees623 on Twitter, and I was baffled enough by the concept that I needed to learn more, which is why we're here today. See, even if you change the base multiplier a bit by, say, adding an extra CPU, the damage Jigglypuff does with the bomber is still 0.95 times that of a normal character, who I'll just be representing through Mario from now on. This is apparently a hidden mechanic within the game, being that explosive damage dealt by Jigglypuff is always going to be slightly weaker than that of the normal amount. At the very least, this is how it's worded in Jigglypuff's Wikipedia entry. It's just one line, but it's there. And anything related to this cannot be found in the in-game tips, from what I've seen at least. And as the wiki entry implies, this isn't just the bomber item. With just about any explosive item really, you'll see that the base damage dealt by Jigglypuff is slightly lower than that by a normal character. For some items like the Gooey Bomb, there actually isn't a change, but then for other ones, unexpectedly, like the Motion Sensor Bomb, it's weaker. And it's not just spawnable items like these. When using Banjo and Kazooie's rear eggs, we can clearly see that Mario deals around 13.4%, but Jigglypuff deals around 12.4%, which is actually lower than the 0.95 times multiplier. Now, since Jigglypuff is a balloon Pokemon, a trait unique enough to where she sort of pops when her shield breaks, it kind of makes sense for her to have a unique relationship with explosives. But I don't know about you, but when I think balloon plus explosive, I think of a relationship more tied to defense, or rather a lack thereof. So I thought that it was weird that Jigglypuff was dealing less explosive damage, rather than taking more explosive damage, And it is weird. It's weird that the Gooey Bomb didn't become weaker despite being an explosion, and it's weird that the rear egg test had less damage get dealt than the 0.95 times multiplier. That's when I saw this reply by Drake Irving that tells us that this multiplier isn't just for explosives. Now I'm gonna have to do a bit of explaining here. See, the way this game works is that the speed in which characters throw their items is not universal. We can easily see this if we try to time throw speeds between Pichu and Mario here. Despite being let go at about the same time and around equal starting points, Mario's Bob-omb goes noticeably further than Pichu's, and does faster. This mechanic of throwing speed is tied to weight. So the heavier a character is, the faster they throw an item. Meaning Bowser here will throw the Bob-omb at a faster speed than Mario. The difference isn't gigantic, but it's there. And then you have to add this to the fact that most throwable items in the game have their damage get changed based on how fast they're going. This is why you can see so much variance with Banjo and Kazooie's rear eggs, which can also be seen by a lot of items. Let's take Mr. Saturn for example. When Mario uses it at point blank range, the damage is 8.7%. There's very slight variance when you start increasing the distance between them, but in the general range of being close to Bowser, the damage is the same. And when Bowser uses it, it now does 9.1%, a pretty noticeable increase of almost 1.05 times the damage. And when Pichu uses it, it now does 8.3%, which is a difference of almost 0.9 times that of Bowser's damage. This is a pretty good confirmation that the speed not only affects some items' damage, but is also tied to weight. And then when Jigglypuff uses the item, it does 8%, which is less than Pichu, despite the fact that Jigglypuff is heavier than Pichu. So basically, here's what happens. For our intents and purposes here today, there's two things that affect the multipliers for damage dealt in an item. A is whether or not the character is Jigglypuff, as this decides whether the multiplier is 1 and therefore basically non-existent, or 0.95 for Jigglypuff, thus nerfing her. Which is why items like the bomber deal the same damage by everyone in the game except for Jigglypuff, since I guess the bomber is technically considered a thrown item here. And B is how fast the item is going when thrown, which depends both on the distance the item traveled and the weight of the class who threw it. And not all items have this property, which just so happens to be the case for a lot of the explosive items. But this is also the case for some normal items like, say, the green shell, whose damage up front is consistent for everyone except for Jigglypuff. This is why that 0.95 times multiplier isn't quite how the math works out in some cases, but even here Jigglypuff will still usually be the weakest of the cast, as Factor A will usually still be present, and she's the second lightest character in the game, which is just a double whammy for damage output in this case. So yeah, a lot of factors in there, but basically Jigglypuff's item throw damage is just weaker overall. This is not a mechanic I've ever really heard talked about, and even the Smash Wiki didn't have all the right information in regards to this, unless I missed something. It's a pretty interesting and honestly kind of important mechanic, so I think that's super cool. But of course, if you've somehow known about this fact since birth, make sure you type in the comments verbatim, PKBeats, how did you not know about this mechanic? So that I can get good interactions on this video, and also hit that subscribe button just for funsies on your way down, thank you. But enough of that crazy stuff, let's do a little bit of a burst fact section just to get a few done. First, Mega Man gives me a fun little mechanical fact about the Gordo and pitfalls. That being that a pitfall trap that's already been placed in the ground is actually able to be triggered and thus knock back King Dedede's Gordo, just like a normal attack. This is contrary to how most other items interact with the buried pitfall, like Link's bombs or the motion sensor bomb, which do nothing when interacting with it. Next, Simon gives me a small visual fact regarding Lucario's stance during spirit battles. That is, in the section where you have to shoot the spirit in order to collect it, Lucario's exact pose will actually vary depending on whether or not he had rage before winning the match. Right here in this match, he had basically no rage before winning and he looks like this. In this match, he had tons of rage and now he looks like this. The difference is incredibly subtle, but you can tell that Lucario's model is very slightly different to accommodate for the rage that he just had in the match prior. It's like his, you call this hair? Whatever it is, it's being affected by his extra aura, but we just don't see the aura effect, you know? I tried to see if this aura effect actually carried over to the victory screen, sort of like that one fact where Little Mac will still be bruised in the victory screen if he was in the match before winning. But I couldn't really see any difference in animation between when he won with no rage and with rage, so there's that. Hey, post-production PKBeats here. I just wanted to really quickly point something out, but while what I said earlier isn't necessarily wrong, there is actually a bit of a difference between each victory screen here. The flames are a bit different, but I don't think this is because of rage, I just think this is because of randomness. As Lucario's hair is unchanged and the flames aren't necessarily bigger as much as they are just different, you know? So I just wanted to point that out. It doesn't really change anything, but it is still fun to note. Alright, back to the main video. Speaking of Lucario, an absurdly long name gave me a fun fact about Lucario's side special a long time ago. So do you remember that fact I gave a long while back regarding Incineroar's side special? And how if the game is slow enough, you can mash out of the first grab and thus make the move fail? Well, you can do this with Lucario's side special too. But the real kicker about this one is that you can do it in real time too. Assuming that you manage to start mashing at exactly the same time or before you get caught up in Lucario's side special, you can escape it. And considering the move does a lot of percent at higher aura ranges, this is actually pretty nice to know. Is what I would say if I can actually see this being super practical. Because the thing is, for me, I stopped being able to mash out after like 5% tops. Now, I'm not going to say I'm the best masher in the world, of course, but I highly doubt anyone would be getting out of the move past like 10% anyways. But if you ever find yourself in a position where you're at incredibly low percents and you're about to get hit by Lucario's side B, you can mash out of it, which is just neat to know. I have no idea if that could actually be like practically used, but you know, it's more useful if Lucario is slowed down by a timer or something. Speaking of being slowed down though, Flygon Games gives me a lovely fact regarding Isabelle's fishing rod when the game is slower. At the starting spawn positions, Isabelle's fishing rod won't reach Pikachu here, even if she takes a step forward. But if you slow the game down, even if she takes a step back, it'll actually be able to reach Pikachu now. So yes, the distance that Isabelle's fishing rod goes changes when the game has been slowed down. This seems to be a property we see a lot on this channel actually. But I kinda like this one especially. See, watch what happens when you use it at the very slow speed of 1/4 in training mode. The hook just goes a little bit everywhere. It's really stupid looking. I have no idea why the physics turns into a Gmod-esque gag in this setting, but it's hysterical to me. And if you use the fishing rod when facing away from the opponent in this setting, the hook may actually freak out enough to actually hook the opponent from behind. Oh and yeah, this actually does happen with the timer slowdown too, which actually makes this fact somewhat practical. But what's even more important to note is that the slowdown from the timer is slow enough to still let the hook freak out. And while it's not as crazy, you can still hook someone from behind you if you slow down then. I love it, it's totally stupid. Also, I have no idea where else to put this, so I'm just gonna throw it here. But I found out that if Mario does his thumbs up taunt while he's holding something, his hand will actually just not be a thumbs up, and instead it'll just be normal. Instead of looking all glitchy and having him do a thumbs up with something in his hands as I'd have expected. So that's a nice detail. Alright, let's get back into the number stuff. Lastly for today, Henry gave me a comment on my last video regarding the boxing ring lights and character weights. See, in my last video, I tested if weight affected how many jumps were necessary to send the boxing ring lights crashing down, which ended up being true, yeah. Henry had pointed out the math where if you multiply the character's weights with the number of times they jumped with them. For Squirtle, you'd get the number 1275, and with Charizard, you'd get the number 1276. Very close numbers, which is probably just a coincidence. But what this did is got me wondering, what about the specific number that you'd need to cause the lights to fall? First, to mention, fast falling does not change the number of jumps necessary to send the lights crashing down. It's a little bit hard to test since fast falling makes you go through the lights, but you can time it properly and the number of jumps Squirtle has to do is the same. So it's pretty safe to say that only weight matters in this specific scenario. So here's how I ended up testing it. I got a target number and just tried to organize characters whose total weights and jumps would add up to that. So for the last video, Squirtle jumping 17 times caused the number to be 1275. So I wanted to see what happens at a hypothetical number of 1274. To get this to happen, I did 10 jumps as Piranha Plant and then 2 jumps as Fox, and at a total of 1274, the light still fell. So I dropped the number down to 1250, which I got with 11 jumps from Cloud and 2 jumps from Game & Watch, and it still fell down. So then I tried for 1249, which I got with 12 pit jumps and 1 shulk jump, and it didn't fall. What this tells us is that the moment the lights experience a total of at least 1250 combined weight, it'll fall. And I did try other combinations like 11 Link jumps and 1 Banjo jump to confirm that it falls at 1250, and 8 Samus jumps and 5 Fox jumps to confirm that it doesn't fall at 1249. Now I'm not sure how consistent this is overall. When I tried this with 3 players, 10 jumps from Wii Fit, 1 from Sword Fighter, and 2 from Roy, altogether it should add up to 1250, and yet the lights wouldn't break. I also did this by swapping out the characters with a different one who weighs the same and the same thing still happened. This is not because this is a 3-player match or anything like that, as when I did the Link and Banjo test from earlier, but just with a third party present it still worked fine. And when I substituted half of Link's jumps with Falcon and did the order differently, it still worked. So at first I thought it was because all 3 of the characters were different weights in this test, but then they created a different combination of characters to reach 1250, while all 3 of them are different weights, and it still worked. The lights went down. And when I did the same character combination as before but substituted me Sword Fighter for Hero, who's just 1 unit of weight heavier, the lights went down properly. So given how it was consistent everywhere else, and how this one failed test needed just 1 more unit of weight to work, my theory is that the weights are perhaps not exactly integers maybe? You know, that means decimal places. But overall it's pretty consistent, so yeah. I say that the lights can only take a sum total of 1249 weight units, and starting at 1250 units it falls. What are you going to do with this information? Nothing. And I think that's a good place to end today's video. I'd like to thank my lovely patrons Skully, Sashanks, Burbo, Hobo King, Niklz, Raighne, 7700, BG, Dameplay, Feurolant, Keckothedragon, Nestor Franco, blizwald, DanishToast, Gabrielle, Gaby, Jigs, Narf2043, RustyRantsYT, sadasda, dasdadsasd, Stan, LOONA, Sylvi, wingedcatgirl, and TheRealFxdeYT. Yeah, we're not ending this list with LOONA anymore. Times are changing. This month was a bit slow for me, what with me being on vacation for its beginning and also just being a bit preoccupied with other things. But I do have plenty of stuff in store for the future for potential random non-facts videos and other things that I think you'll like. Though for the next video it'll probably be another random facts video, but I do have something at least kinda new for it, so you can wait and see. Outside of that, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good right now, I hope y'all are too. There's tons of awesome things I get to look forward to, like Metroid Dread, the final Smash DLC, Breath of the Wild 2, even Pokemon Legends is actually really intriguing me. Like, I'm still really wary about Pokemon now, but that game is looking pretty fun. Now, in regards to Metroid, I do personally wish that they weren't showing so much of the game's contents through trailers, but I also really appreciate that they're going all in on advertisement for this game, so I'll just suck it up and like avoid spoilers somehow. I really hope that the game's sales are groundbreaking for the series so we can get more Metroid stuff in the future, you know? I have no idea if I'll even do content about the game, depends on like what kind of stuff there is to do. I sort of specialize in trivia stuff I guess, at this point, which will definitely come up in Breath of the Wild 2, but it's hard to say for other games. Anyhow, I appreciate all of your support as usual, and I hope you liked today's video. Keep up the good work, stay casual, and I'll see y'all later.